Amnesty, what do you have to do with it? I explained to you in 1955, the black man was obliged to give up his seat on the bus to a white person. A woman, Rosa Parks, one day refused and was arrested for refusing to get up. His attitude generated the bus boycott led by Martin Luther King. Yes, this was the beginning of the movement against the injustices that the black population suffered. But what does this have to do with amnesty, Nikolas? The injustice against a woman became a milestone of a collective struggle. There was a bus, here a lipstick. Deborah, married, mother of 2 small children, hairdresser, sentenced to 14 years in prison. His crime, he wrote, was losing his mane in a statue with lipstick. But you should already know that. The question that remains is if she had written Bolsonaro out instead of losing Manet. Moraes and Dino would have condemned her in the same way. A person who does not have an image of her within Congress, breaking anything, no violence. And worse, a cleaning worker undid Deborah's coup d'etat with soap and water. Who poses the greatest risk to democracy? A hairdresser with a lipstick or 15 drug dealers released by the STF? Answer: everyone already knows, but many are afraid to answer. And that's my point. When you treat an injustice just as a number, you ignore that it is a person, a family who is suffering, and that you may one day be the victim of the same injustice. Unfortunately, we have many other victims. Eliene Amorim, 28 years old, manicurist. Arrested on 03/22/2023, almost 2 months after the acts on January 8th in São Luís. The reason for her arrest was the accusation that she had participated in acts of vandalism in Brasilia. But to date, no proof has been presented that she broke anything, invaded buildings, or encouraged any type of violence. One of the pages of the complaint shows that the only alleged participation attributed to her is the fact that she had traveled to Brasilia. That's it. She's been in prison for 2 years. Giovanna, a clerk 8 months pregnant, arrived in Brasilia in the late afternoon of the 8th, between 5 and 6 p.m., that is hours after the riot. She was arrested the next morning, near the camp in front of the headquarters. APGR admits that there is no evidence and that Giovanna participated in the acts. One of the central witnesses, the bus driver who transported her to Brasilia and could testify that she arrived late in the afternoon after the events had occurred, was barred from testifying. Can you believe it? Minister Alexandre de Moraes ordered the arrest of Flavio Beltrão, a 58-year-old homeless man who was held for 11 days in Papuda. Yes, a single homeless individual. How, if it's possible? Simple. Since he was unemployed, homeless, without money, he started attending the camps to get food in a place where he could sleep. The next day, the 8th, he was arrested without any proof that he had participated in depredation, invasion, or organization of any illegal act. After 11 days imprisoned in Papuda, he achieved freedom with an electronic ankle bracelet. But the homeless man had to ask an obvious question to the assistant judge of Moraes, open quotes, "I don't have an address. How will I wear the anklet? How am I going to pay the fine if I don't even have money to eat?" Ezequiel Ferreira Luis, father of 6 children, and sentenced to 14 years in prison by the STF. Reason: the presence inside a building without any record of having destroyed anything or threatened anyone. The mere presence was a reason for receiving a sentence greater than many applied to drug traffickers, homicides, and rapists. Paulo Gabriel da Silveira, flag seller, arrived on the 8th at 21 Uás in Brasilia. Coming from Goiás, he bought 10 Brazilian flags to sell and pay his son's pension. The next day, he sold only 3, and in front of the headquarters, he was arrested along with other protesters. The defense pointed out that tracking his home proves that he arrived in Brasilia after everything happened and that he was never at the scenes of the acts. Even so, he was taken to Papuda and spent 3 months in prison, was prosecuted and now convicted by the STF. By committing the crime of criminal association, all of these are being treated as if they were enemies of democracy. In the country where the largest seizure of cash was made at the house of Gedel Vieira, 51 million reais, was sentenced to 14 years in prison and is already under house arrest. Right in the same country as a man sentenced to 400 years for corruption, Sergio Cabral, and is imprisoned for less than 7 years and is already released. proportionality in these sentences. But let me clarify further. It's indeed clear that justice has a side, and if you wear red, that's acceptable. But if there's no unfortunate news for you, in 2006, OMST infiltrated and vandalized the City Hall, resulting in 0 convictions. In 2017, the Occupy Brasilia protest gathered 45,000 left-wing protesters against Temer on that day. The headquarters of 3 ministries were set on fire, and there was depredation in 8 condemned buildings. 0. In 2018, Minister Carmen Lucia's building was spray-painted by members of the MST. Do you know what the sentence was for them? 0. Where was OSTF to sentence them to 14 years in prison, you know? There is no justice, let alone a sense of proportion in the convictions. It is a pure and simple desire to end people's lives. But Nikolas, are you going to wipe the cloth just because it's on your side now? Of course not. The 8th was a sad day for our country. Breaking and disorder has never been part of any right-wing demonstration. What we want is simple justice. Justice is punishment without revenge. But each one is his own, no more and no less. Brazil has already amnesty torturers and corrupt people. Denying forgiveness to the protester is choosing to punish only those who have the least power. Either put all those involved on the left who have already done the same thing in jail, or release those on the right to be the same as those on the left. What is not possible is to punish a fan who has committed something and the other fan who has done the same thing repeatedly never have punishment. And why is that? Because the judge is on their team. It doesn't work. Amnesty for the prisoners of the 8th is not acquitting the case. It is recognizing that justice cannot be selective when democracy also made mistakes in its own mirror.